Remake Rewind.
Thank you for listening to Remake Rewind, podcast where we decide if remakes or reboots should have happened. But this week, we're not doing that. This is topic episode number 2.
Yeah.
I'm Mike, as always. I've got my co-host, Alex. What's up, Alex?
Hey, man. How you doing?
I'm actually doing pretty good. We went away for the weekend. We went to a cabin out in Big Bear. Enjoyed nature a little bit.
Love Big Bear.
And, yeah, I've never been. I've never been out to Big Bear before, so it was really nice going there. We did just a little shout out. This is not a paid promotion or anything. I just really want to talk about this place, but it's Castlewood Cottages out in Big Bear. It's themed cottages, so we stayed in the tree house or enchanted forest or something like that. But it was awesome. I really recommend it for anybody who just wants to get away for a weekend. Go to Big Bear.
Hell yeah.
Go to Castlewood Cottages. It's cool. But can you let us know what we're talking about this week?
Today we are doing part 1 of what's probably going to be a multi-part series where we talk about video games that became movies.
Yep, we're covering the video game curse. So some would argue that in late 2019, 2020, that the video game curse was broken with Detective Pikachu or Sonic. And we're talking about one of those movies today, but I think generally, starting with the Mario movie in 1990, I think that was 1993, generally video game movies haven't been very good. So there has been this term coined, the video game curse, because most of these movies are not very good. So I think we should probably start off just by talking about why video game movies aren't very good. I've got a couple things. I think the most obvious one is when you become involved with the character, you're playing the video game, you're playing as the character. If you're a fan of the video game, I guess watching isn't as interesting as playing. Although with streaming and all the Twitch stuff, I don't know if that's necessarily true because people love watching other people play video games.
Yeah, but it's not the same. I think what it comes down to is, watching someone play is not the same as watching a movie. I think it kind of comes down to the way story is structured in a game and what your expectations are when you're playing a game.
Right.
Most games, and obviously there's going to be exceptions to this. I know somebody's going to talk about The Last of Us or something, but most games revolve around you going on, quests or finding things, like reaching some objective. And in movies, having people just constantly like finding MacGuffins doesn't work on its own. There's got to be other stuff going on.
When you look at other things, like you look at this is one that's in the works. They've been trying to make this movie for, God, it seems like 10 years now, but Uncharted, those are like playable movies with Nathan Drake, and there are some pretty crazy cutscenes, but when all is said and done, you put in 10 to 12 hours in a game, but realistically it's 45 minutes to an hour of actual cutscenes and story.
Yeah.
And so you now have to stretch something, 40 minutes worth of story into an hour and a half, 2 hours, 2.5 hours. And now these days for action movies, most action movies are beyond 2 hours. So how do you take a plot that is 45 minutes and stretch it to be 2 hours?
Yeah. And again, you're kind of talking about the exception, like how many video games actually have that stories that aren't thin, Oh, another thing I was going to say was you gave Uncharted as the example, and Uncharted is Indiana Jones, So like the best version of an Uncharted movie is going to be a poor man's Indiana Jones, probably.
Yeah, it's going to be an updated Indiana Jones with a smartass.
Yeah, exactly. So like, and even like Tomb Raider is Indiana Jones, but with a girl, but that's still kind of interesting. It's more interesting than Uncharted. So I think that's another thing that runs into like how many truly original ideas are there in video games.
And then you can take something like Warcraft, for example, which has a very rich story, but how do you condense that into a single movie?
Right.
Because
Fallout,
this day and age now, you want it to be a franchise. You're hoping that you're going to do more, but you can't guarantee you're going to get a franchise when you go to make a video game movie. Yeah. So you have to make something that's self-contained. So sometimes you have to kneecap yourself to make sure that you're not going to go beyond what you can actually do. It's very strange because going back and thinking about it, like we did Doom not too long ago. That was our first episode that you and I did together. We talked about it a lot, how it just doesn't feel like the game. Even with that, the first person thing.
But do you really want to watch a movie that feels like that game?
Right. And so that's where it's tricky because, the Doom games are very small on plot.
Yeah.
It's mainly just go into a room, they seal you in the room, you kill all the bad guys in that room pops open, you go into the next room.
Yeah.
So what we're going to be doing this episode is we're going to be talking about the very first video game movie, at least one of the first ones, the first big one, Mario. And then we're going to wrap it up by talking about Sonic, which is the most recent big blockbuster video game movie. And like Alex said, I'm sure this is just going to be volume 1. I'm sure we'll, keep this in our back pocket and come back to this one every once in a while. But Mario, what do you remember about Mario? Did you watch this when you were younger?
Oh yeah. Yeah, this came out when I was 8, so I was exactly the right age for it. I don't know that I have any specific memories about it though. I think I just remember being really excited and being, entertained on some level, but also like not really retaining any of it.
Yeah, that's how I feel. Like I remember the first time I watched it, and it was because we when I was very young, my dad lived in the Bay Area, my mom lived in Northern California because she was finishing up nursing school.
When you say Northern California, you mean like the north of California?
It's like Sacramento area.
Oh, okay.
So she was going to school to be a nurse, and she was finishing that off. So my dad had already moved to my hometown where I spent most of my childhood. And so we went to go visit my dad and go to Great America. And so we were staying in a hotel. And I remember watching this movie. My dad rented it on like the pay-per-view at the hotel room. And I remember watching this movie, being super excited for one, like being in a hotel was just not a normal thing for a kid.
Yeah.
Going to Great America the next day and watching Super Mario, like,
yeah,
that's a weekend.
Yeah, that's the fucking 90s wet dream.
Yeah, dude. And I was a huge Mario fan. Like my dad left the original Nintendo at our house, and then he took the Super Nintendo. And as like a 6-year-old, I figured out how to hook up the Nintendo, never doing anything like that before, so I can play Mario. Yeah. So I was a big Mario fan, and when this came out, I was super excited. And I remember being confused by it, and I haven't really gone back. I think I watched this movie once when I was in high school, so it's still been probably 12 to 15 years since I've had any experience with this movie.
Yeah, same. You know what though? I did not have a Nintendo growing up. My first, like, I played Nintendo, but that was at like the rich kid's house.
Right.
And the first system that I got was a Genesis. So Sonic was like my big thing growing up. And I had a Game Boy, so I had a little bit of
my cousins had the Genesis. Yeah. So I'd play the Genesis at at my cousin's house. So my dad got the Super Nintendo for his jewelry store, like his back room, and we didn't get another console.
Yeah, because you need a Super Nintendo for a jewelry store.
Yeah, it was just.
I think I saw one in Uncut Gems.
Yeah, it was just while he was hanging out when there weren't customers. He'd play video games. But
that's awesome.
The next console we got wasn't until the PlayStation in 2000, and it had already been out for several years. I think the PlayStation 2 came out like a year after I got the first PlayStation. Yeah, we didn't have a ton of consoles. So Mario was a huge part of my childhood. Do you want to give us the pitch for this movie or for Sonic?
Hoo boy. Let me try Mario. A couple plumbers. Oh, it's so silly. A couple plumbers in New York accidentally stumble into an alternate dimension, chasing a girl that gets kidnapped into it, and they run afoul of a megalomaniac that who runs this race of people that are actually evolved from dinosaurs instead of humans, or instead of apes,
but look exactly
like humans. And he's trying to cross over into our dimension to take over the human world, and they have to stop him. That's pretty good, right?
I don't really understand. Yeah, I think that's as good as you can get, because this movie makes no sense.
Let me start off by saying I had very low expectations of this movie. I kind of had a good time with it.
So did I. I did fall asleep twice, so I had to like start it over a couple of times.
I found myself more engaged than, say, Doom Annihilation.
Yeah, I was very tired when I started, but once I like started it for the third time, I was in it, and I watched it from beginning to end, and like I did have to rewind it a couple of times just to be like, what the fuck just happened? Because
I did that too.
It made no sense, and like I feel like you got absolutely everything in your pitch, but also missed everything.
I mean, I'm trying to condense it to like 2 sentences. Movie. It's insane.
Yeah, it's a
But-
bonkers movie.
But that is something that I actually really appreciated about it. Even it's a swing and a miss. You know what I mean? Make no doubt about it. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna praise the movie, but I'm gonna defend it a little bit because it's really ambitious. Like I can see exactly what they're
ambitious.
I can see what they're going for.
So the writer-directors were a married couple that apparently like bickered like crazy on set to the point where their own agents had to be like kick them off the set of their own movie. They apparently would like one person would write one scene in the one day, and then the next day when they go to film it, the other would completely rewrite the person's scene, so they would like get in shouting matches on set. This movie, like Dennis Hopper had a lot of things to say about this movie, so he was supposed to be.
It's insane that Dennis
5
Hopper's
weeks.
In this movie.
He looks like Donald Trump in this movie.
Oh, dude, I have that in my notes.
He looks exactly like him.
I feel
It's
like they
weird.
used Donald Trump as a reference for him.
They must have.
But
it's
so funny that Dennis Hopper's even in the movie. Like I was watching him and he's giving like kind of a vintage Dennis Hopper performance at times.
He's doing
Dennis Hopper. I'm like, this is a fucking guy from Apocalypse Now, you know?
He's the same guy as the bad guy in Speed.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So he famously said, he was telling this story about this movie, and he was saying like he was only supposed to be on set for 5 weeks, ended up ballooning to 17 weeks because the directors had no idea what the fuck they were doing. Like this was their first movie. They had never done anything. They had these huge egos. Like they, after this movie came out, tried to say that they like to think that their movie is what actually happened, and that Nintendo went and made Mario as an adaptation of a movie that didn't exist yet, kind of thing. So they feel like their movie is the prequel to which the games are based off of, as opposed to saying their movie is based off the game.
The podcast listeners can't see my face right now, but it looks like this.
he's his head is almost 90 degrees. His face is stretched out. He looks perturbed.
That's funny. This movie starts off insane. Like 2 minutes in, I was like, oh, this is fucking bananas.
Like it has an animated opening it's not quite 8-bit or 16-bit. Like it's not Nintendo or Super Nintendo graphics, but it's trying to be semi-pixelated to look like a video game. Like it looks more like Sega than it looks like Nintendo.
Yeah.
And it has the narrator doing like the shittiest Brooklyn accent.
This is a New York movie, by the way. Everyone like it's fucking New York. It doesn't just take place in New York. Like it's a New York movie.
Yeah, well, like when they go into the other dimension, it's Dino Hatton instead of Manhattan. Like I don't even know where to begin with this movie. Like
I'm just gonna start going through my notes, I think.
Yeah, I kind of want to do the same thing.
Okay. First of all, I love Samantha Mathis. I had a big old crush on her when I was younger, so it's kind of fun to see her in this. Oh, okay. This kind of relates to Mathis, but really to Bob Hoskins and Dennis Hopper. Well, maybe not so much to Hopper. Hopper at places. Bob Hoskins is fucking committing in this movie.
He is, and he actually broke his hand filming this movie.
I appreciate the shit out of that.
So he broke his hand during like a pursuit. Somebody slammed a car door on his hand, so he's actually wearing like a cast in most of this movie that's painted flesh color to like blend in.
Shit.
I tried to look for it. I saw that fact before I watched the movie, and I didn't notice. So
the version that we were watching was like 480p, so that doesn't surprise me.
This movie you can't find anywhere. Like you can find it on Blu-ray and DVD to purchase, but it's not streaming anywhere.
I think Bob Hoskins, Roger Rabbit, Who Framed Roger Rabbit came out in 1988, so I think Bob was like thought that the success of Who Framed Roger Rabbit was going to be sort of indicative of this. I think he probably thought they were sort of in the same vein.
They rewrote the script like 5 times before he got it. Like before he agreed to it. He said no a bunch of times. He did not want to do this, and then after like the 5th rewrite, they like pressured him into doing the movie, and he kind of like begrudgingly accepted it. But for the rest of his career, he said like this is the worst thing he ever did. Him and John Leguizamo were drunk the entire time. They were just saying like there were so many rewrites that there was no point in learning their lines because they'd be rewritten on the day.
Yeah.
So they just would get sauced and just have fun.
That's awesome.
And you have, John Leguizamo playing an Italian plumber.
Yeah, I took issue with that.
Well, what's funny is
I mean, I guess Bob Hoskins. Hoskins is an Italian. I don't know his background.
I don't remember what he is either, but
He at least looks
kind
like
of
it.
looks
He looks like
he-
Bob's Burgers too.
Yeah, so like he could be
He's swarthy, is what I'm
Italian.
saying.
He at least looks like it a little bit. Like John Leguizamo said, like the main reason he wanted to do it was because you had a history of, you know, Italians playing Hispanic roles. Like you had specifically he called out Al Pacino playing Tony Montana.
Yeah.
And so he's like, here I am getting to play Luigi. Like, of course I'm going to do it.
I thought that
you
was
know
funny.
who was supposed to be Luigi? Tom Hanks, but the studio said no because after
I can kind of
Turner
see
and
that
Hooch
actually.
at another movie that he did, I can't remember the other one, but he had like 2 bombs back to back that just didn't really make money.
Young Hanks,
so
I can
they didn't
see.
think he had the star power anymore. You know what his next movie was? Forrest Gump and Philadelphia. Those 2 movies back to back.
Yeah.
Well, Philadelphia first, then Forrest Gump. So he got rejected for this and went on to do those 2 movies.
That sort of falls in line with my general opinion about this movie, my general takeaway. I think that this movie had a lot of really like ambitious, you know, it's never going to be it's never going to win an Oscar or something, but it was very close to being a lot more fun and like genuinely being fun.
The special effects were incredible for what it was.
They put a lot of money into stunts and set design and stuff. But the Tom Hanks thing is like, if they had gotten that, it would have been a better movie. No offense to John Leguizamo, just, you know, Hanks at that point would have been better. I mean, it's ridiculous, but they were trying to create some sort of other world. And I think if a couple other things were, you know, tweaked or had a little bit more thought put into them, it could have been pretty interesting.
Well, and they do, like, when you look at like creature design, like Yoshi looks incredible. And, you know, that was animatronic.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand why they made him so small. Like they do all these things where it's like they want it to be similar to the game. Like they have flamethrowers, but the flamethrowers open up and they have like a funnel that's kind of shaped like the flowers, like the fire flowers from Mario. And then you know, obviously Mario and Luigi jump around, so they give them like jumping boots that have like these like levers that push them up. And
that
but then by the end of the movie they kind of make them fly a little bit, which was a little weird.
Yeah, it seems like something they thought they needed to include but didn't really have a good handle on how they wanted to do it.
And then it was weird because they had all these characters. So like they had Toad, but Toad was like a normal person, which is a reptilian person, and then they turned him into a Goomba.
That genuinely bummed me out. I forgot that Toad was in the movie at first and that he was like the friendly Goomba, and I was genuinely kind of sad to see him get turned because he seemed like such a nice guy. He didn't deserve that. I also completely forgot that he was like a Bob Dylan guy.
Yeah. Well, then you had Iggy and Spike,
Dude,
played
Fisher
by
Stevens. I've never seen without a beard.
Really?
I don't think so. I'm sure I have.
He was.
I
Fisher
feel like he just
Stevens.
has a
I
beard all the
know,
time.
obviously from like Hackers.
Yeah.
He did that. He was
in Lost,
he was
too.
in Yeah, he was in Brownface in Short Circuit.
Yeah.
And then he was in this TV show that my dad really liked called Early Edition about a guy who gets tomorrow's newspaper.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
And he has to like try to stop things from happening.
It's awesome.
And Fisher Stevens is like the best friend in there, and he'd always be trying to use it for like financial gain.
Yeah. What a
Fisher
dick.
Stevens, good for him.
Yeah, man. The other I don't remember his name now, but the other dude has been in a bunch of stuff too.
Yeah, the guy who was
a couple seasoned character actors.
Yeah, and once again, like you get into, there's certain things that didn't make sense. So they had like Big Bertha is one of the big fish in the underwater levels,
right?
But in this, Big Bertha is a very, I don't even know how to describe her. She's like this larger than life African American woman who steals the MacGuffin from the heroes at the beginning of the movie, and then they like seduce her on the dance floor to get the MacGuffin back. But then she gives them like all the Mario gear. Like she gives them the Mario uniforms and the Mario
like she respected Mario for besting her, but we never get that interaction, which is kind of annoying. The MacGuffin,
weird.
by the way, we should say is a shard of the it's a shard of the meteorite that knocked out the dinosaurs, and it landed in New York, not in Mexico, and also there's like the crater is the size of my living room. Like it's not a big deal. The actual crater of the meteor that they think killed the dinosaurs is the size of Texas or something.
Right.
So that, you know, just fun little inconsistency.
Yeah, it's super weird, and like they had all these like subplots that really don't amount to anything. So like the beginning of the movie, you have Samantha Mathis is Daisy, so not Princess Peach, but Daisy.
Yeah, that also bothered me.
She was like not abandoned. Like it's so weird. Like the beginning of the movie is
she's
her
the king
mother dropping her off at like at an orphanage with like nuns, and she hatches. So we see it's our first kind of hint that they're reptilian people.
That egg is big, by the way.
It's huge.
Yeah, I don't envy dinosaur women.
Yeah, because they're human size.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that.
Maybe their vaginas are different.
Because the egg was like no joke. Like you'd have to think it was like big enough to hold a human baby.
Yeah, I mean it would split a woman in two.
Yeah, it's insane.
Any Earth woman.
They leave her there. She happens to become a paleontologist who discovers the meteorite that destroyed the dinosaurs.
Well, maybe she was drawn to it. I'll excuse that.
Maybe. And she also happens to have the one piece that allows, the merging of the two dimensions. Because that's the big thing about this is the dinosaurs that go extinct, the meteorite actually created an alternate dimension.
Right, because that makes sense.
Right. And so it seems like they can go back and forth. Why weren't people coming back and forth? Like, why does Dennis Hopper need to merge the worlds? Why can't he just come and...
Well, I have another question. Dennis Hopper in this movie has a machine that makes you smarter.
Yeah, he can devolve you or evolve you.
Why isn't he using the evolve machine to do some more shit? Evolve himself into a god? Like...
I don't know, dude. Like, it raises too many questions. And then he, like, by the halfway through the movie, he figures out a way to make it portable and make it a gun versus making it like this big chamber.
Does he figure out a way to do that, or does he just pick up a devolve gun?
I think I think he asked a scientist, like, hey, is the devolve gun ready?
Oh, okay. But
yeah, so like what's weird is they do a lot of stuff that's very Mario. Like they eventually end up in their jumpsuits, and
that's another question I had. Why didn't they have the jumpsuits either at first or make a bigger deal about it later? And then specifically, why were their colors reversed in the beginning? Like in the beginning, they're sort of wearing red and green, but Luigi's in red and Mario's in green.
Right. And then when you get the costumes, it's just like, oh, that they got their costumes, but this is like before and they're also Easter eggs were big before.
Yeah, they're also like not really the right costumes. Like they got blue in them.
Yeah,
for some reason.
they're not overalls. It's just
I guess
a jumpsuit that has like an overall pattern. Yeah. Like it has.
I guess they do have blue, but it doesn't look the same.
Yeah, it's a little weird, and there's certain things that they do where they're like trust the mushrooms and everything, and it's like the king is a giant mushroom, like that takes over like the whole continent because he's devolved.
Yeah, he's not just a mushroom; he is a system of fungus that exists
across the entire
city, which is kind of cool. I actually kind of like that idea
because they leave the city,
and
he still, as a fungus, saves the Mario Brothers when they like drive out of the tunnels with the car.
I have two questions about that. So they get into a car chase. And the Mario Brothers drive down an under construction tunnel in Dino Hatton, and they end up driving out of the end of the unfinished tunnel and into a wasteland. It looks like the Judge Dredd wasteland, like a post-apocalyptic hellhole.
Right.
I know that New Jersey's not that nice, but it's not a fucking wasteland. Like,
yeah, that's exactly what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a slight to New Jersey.
But it kind of begs the question, like, what's going on outside of Dino Hatton? Is that the only part of that world that is populated? Like, where's the rest of Dino America?
Right. But I don't know. And it's like,
and is Koopa a governor? Is he a president?
No, he's the mayor.
He's not even that big of a deal.
Or president. No, he's President Koopa. Koopa. Yeah, he's president. But it's like,
ooh, that's another Donald Trump comparison. Weird.
Yeah, he's very Trump-esque. It's
prophetic,
alarming how similar it is and how much he looks like it. But I think what drives me crazy about this movie the most is how it tries to do everything that's in Mario in such a way that's not Mario at all. So like they're constantly traveling through tunnels and pipes and whatnot, but they're just giant pipes running through the city, and they're sliding down them on mattresses.
Yeah, that was one of my least favorite parts of the movie, mostly because of the song that they played. That was ridiculous. It was like a rock song that wasn't in keeping with the rest of the score.
No, it didn't work at all.
No.
So they do that. They also have like the bob-ombs, and everything, but they just like walk forever, and it's just like that's
Well,
really strange. And then you had
everyone looked at the bomb as if it was like a nuclear weapon, like multiple people, like Koopa, and then just a guy in a car
like a taxi
on the street.
driver.
Was he a taxi driver? I was wondering. They saw the bomb from like, this guy saw it under his car, by the way. He saw it from 20 feet away as he was about to hit it. And they're all like, oh my God, I got to get out of here. Like the bomb, it's going to be the worst thing in the world. And then it literally blows up directly underneath Koopa, and he just kind of flies in the air and he's fine.
Yeah.
So it doesn't seem like it's a big deal.
It doesn't make any sense. Well, and then they do like this thing where like they want to give the mushrooms power. So like they say, trust in the fungus. And so it's like, you would think that, like, I don't know how you would do it, but maybe give them powers when they're on the mushrooms, like make them stronger, like maybe don't make them bigger, but make them have more energy or stronger. But no, like he at one point he holds up a mushroom and it turns into a shield and everything. And so it's like, why even have the mushrooms in this? The traveling through tunnels isn't really the same. The jumping isn't the same. You don't squash bad guys the same. You have well,
the Goombas don't look the same either.
So originally the Goombas were going to be the turtles, which are I can't remember what the turtles are called.
They're not Koopa Troopa, right?
Oh no, that is what they are. Koopa Troopas are the
Now it's gonna bother me too. Fuck.
Yeah, it's driving me crazy. I know I have a note in there somewhere.
Mario turtle name came up. Oh yeah, it is Koopa Troopas.
What ended up being the Goombas were supposed to be was the original design for the Troopa Koopas, like the turtle things, and then for whatever reason notes got mixed up, so they ended up calling them Goombas. But then you end up having some more reptilian looking Goombas that have like elongated faces, and they were still called Goombas. So like a Goomba is just anybody who's been devolved, I guess.
Yeah, but what is a Goomba in the game? Are they?
So a Goomba's supposed to be like
a mushroom.
A mushroom. Yeah, it's a mushroom.
Weird, man.
And they made it these weird reptilian frog-like creatures.
Yeah, and I mean, I know
that are massive.
I know that we're like way beyond this, but it really bothered me that when they go through the de-evolution process, they change physically. That really annoyed me.
Yeah,
like on the
way
screen,
too big.
Yeah, and on the screen, they show like an X-ray of somebody's brain. He's like, "See, the brain gets smaller when we do this." But it's like, no, you're turning him into a different
You're mutating
species.
them.
Yeah. And they become weird. 8 feet tall, and their heads become like shrunken heads.
they become like the Hulk with like a child's head on it.
Yeah,
it's super weird. And then they're like, they don't do anything. Like they're defeated in an elevator by having them sway around. Like you play music and they're defeated.
Yeah,
and then like at the end of the movie, you have Koopa is in like this bucket, like this crane thing, which is. There are a lot of boss battles in the Mario games where they're in a contraption a lot like that floats around. So I was like, oh, cool, they're going to do that. But then they end up just spraying him with like the devolving gun until he turns into primordial ooze. And it's just like, that wasn't like a Mario way of defeating him. Like,
could have knocked him
into
lava or something.
Yeah, like it should have been something like that, because in the first Mario game, it was you'd have to jump over him, you'd run across a bridge, pull a lever so he falls in lava. I would have liked that. I would have even liked... if they used the fire flowers, anything that was Mario related.
Yeah, and the boss battles in Mario like take place in castles, and I know they don't have they don't have castles in the movie, and that's fine. But like, why not have it take place in like a giant skyscraper that sort of looks like a castle or something?
Right, or even have it take place in different areas. Like they have to go and see Mushroom Kingdom and everything. So you see, maybe Dino Hatton is the capital, but like, why did they not have to go to all the different zones? And originally the movie was apparently supposed to have all the different zones. They were gonna have to fight.
They spent a lot of the budget on the set design, so they couldn't go anywhere else.
Because originally we're going to go to all these different zones, and they've told, oh, your princess is in another castle and have to go elsewhere.
I wanted the movie to end with that so bad.
Yeah, that would have been tight. Well, then the movie ends on like a cliffhanger.
It's got a post-credit scene.
Yeah. It makes no sense.
It blew. Well, we're talking about two different things, but it ends on a cliffhanger, and then it after the credits, there's a post-credit scene. I was like, oh fuck, they're 20 years ahead of their time.
Yeah, it makes no sense, and like we haven't really talked about this movie. We've bounced around so much, but that's just like how bonkers this movie is.
I could talk about this movie for another 2 hours. Like I have a bunch of notes that I want to elaborate on.
Easily. Like my very first note is, why would you have plungers on the wall? Gross. Like they have like their plungers on the wall, and they're not like new plungers like, oh, or
no, they're
even,
used
like,
ones.
It was like, if it like, I would be even cool if it was like a used plunger, if it was like dad's plunger, like it was the first plunger their dad used in the business kind of
hasn't
thing.
been touched in 40
but
years.
No, it's like the plunger that they're actually using. They take with them to job sites. That's disgusting.
Yeah, it is. It's not even your shit. It's other people's shit.
Exactly. It's disgusting, and it's on the wall.
And
then, like,
I thought his beef with Scapelli was funny, but not in a good way. I thought it was like superfluous to the movie.
It was so underutilized, like to do
I
that.
didn't,
Like
I didn't need it in the movie.
Yeah, so before, like, you have this subplot on Earth that ultimately didn't matter because, like, it's supposed to be like the mob is hassling Daisy because her dino site is taking up too much time and they can't develop the land, so they come in to try to sabotage it. But then they leave Earth, and then they get back, and the bad guys turned into a monkey, and there's no resolution. Like, there's no real conflict with that.
Yeah. By the way, so 2 things about that. First, a light one. The Scapelli goons that sabotage her dig site are wearing Scapelli uniforms. So that anybody, and they're white, and it's nighttime, so anybody that sees them from 200 yards away is going to recognize who they are.
Yeah, it's absurd.
Doesn't seem
now,
like
granted, it's the mob. So, do they really care?
I guess.
I don't know.
Point number 2 about that's not quite as light. He threatens her with very, what's the word I'm looking for? He threatens her in a very violent way, and sort of alludes that it might be sexual. And in like a kid's movie, I mean, I know it was like 1993, and things are different in 2020. I was a little put off by it. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, well, it was weird because like you keep seeing in newspapers throughout the beginning of the movie, like all these women have gone missing because Koopa is trying to find Daisy because he knows that somebody from Dino Hatton crossed over. Right. So he's trying to find women. So they just keep abducting young women. But
we don't know that until halfway through the movie.
But we don't really know that yet. And so the bad guy says something along the lines like, a lot of beautiful women have gone missing.
Yeah, and he's like standing all close to her and shit.
Yeah, the implication is just really bad.
Yeah.
They're not going to say no because of the implication.
Yeah, it was not great.
Well, and then they have like this weird thing at the beginning of the movie when they're like in the tunnels and they're fixing the pipes after Scapelli's dudes like destroyed the pipes, and they're trying to chase them, and they say something along the lines like, you hear an echo, and Luigi starts running the opposite direction. And Mario goes, no, that's just the echo. They're this way. And he's like, how do you know that? He's like, I've been listening to pipes my whole life. And it's like, how many like people have you heard getting like kidnapped in your life that you can recognize that like they're running in different directions? Like, that's a little strange and a weird skill set to have. I don't even know. But yeah, basically this movie makes no sense. And it's not Mario, but it's also very Mario. Yeah. And like the creator of Mario said that like, they tried to stick with the tone and they essentially took a big swing. But because of this movie, Nintendo has not made any other movies.
Here's another one of my points where I think it could have actually been a slightly better movie had they changed one little thing, is the music. The music is...
Oh, the music's awful.
It's ridiculous. The music sounds like a rejected Home Alone score. Like, it's very... I agree. It's like very jovial, and not that this is like a grim, dark movie or anything, but there's a middle ground there that would have made more sense. Like it's farcical.
Yeah, it's just weird. I think your comment is exactly right. Like it was trying to be John Williams, and it's not.
Yeah, and like mind you, if people listening to this haven't seen it, the alternate dimension New York looks like Demolition Man or Mad Max or something.
It
like,
totally looks like Demolition Man. Like I'd be surprised if they didn't reuse some of those sets.
Yeah. Oh, and that's another thing about Dino Hatton. It really is anarchy out on the streets there. Like there are just crimes happening constantly, and like the cars are emitting sparks. It's insanity.
Well, it's like the cars are run by like go-kart level. Like it has not go-karts, but like bumper cars. Like it has the pole that goes up and touches the ceiling for power. Like
which actually, I don't know. And they're on a grid. Like that's probably more efficient than our power system. But if they can find a way to make it, not
you go into San Francisco and like that's how Muni powers the buses.
Yeah, exactly.
Those little cables. So like that's not necessarily a bad thing, but they're like Muni doesn't spray out sparks 25 feet in either direction from the car.
And there's just like crimes happening everywhere. Like it's a dystopia.
Yeah, it's awful. But it's also like I don't understand why Koopa, when he has such a stronghold on it and nobody's fighting him, like everyone's just resigned because they realize like there's no one who's going to go fight this guy.
Right.
Why would he want to risk going to Earth where he doesn't know the terrain, he doesn't know anybody, he doesn't have any resources? Like, what was he going to do?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a great question.
Because it's like he has the devolve ray, but how many soldiers does he really have compared to the world? Like he would be stopped in New York. Like the New York, unfortunately, with everything that we've seen over the last couple weeks, the brutality of the police, like
oh, come on.
I think the New York PD could handle Koopa.
Well, I don't think they were militarized in 93, but yeah, I take your point.
I mean, they still were. They're know that there's been systemic police brutality in the United States forever.
This is a weird way to tie this in.
Yeah, I wasn't planning on bringing it up, but I just don't see how Koopa could take over the world.
Yeah, and we have no indication of any sort of army that he has or anything. And again, that brings me back to my question. What exactly is he in control of? Like, I know you said he's the president, but we don't get a sense of the rest of the country outside of Dino Hatton.
Right.
So it seems like he's just kind of the mayor.
Right. And he also doesn't seem like he has the will of even his people. Like the Goombas follow his commands, but the Goombas also are stupid and can be defeated by music.
Yeah, he doesn't have like
Aunt
a general.
Petunia. Exactly. Like Aunt Petunia from Harry Potter is like his number 2, and she's like trying to connive and go around him throughout the entire movie. So it's like his sister, even if he had more resources and he had an army, as soon as he crossed over, there would just have been a coup in Dinotopia or Dino Hatton.
Well,
and he wouldn't have anything like.
You're not wrong, but just to be clear, he wasn't trying to cross over. His original plan was to merge the two worlds, because if you put the meteorite shard back into the meteorite, then the two worlds would sort of merge back together. Which, by the way, we see that sort of happen. I don't know how the logic of this works, but Petunia fucking puts the meteorite shard back into the meteorite for a moment, so the worlds start merging, but it's just Mario and Koopa for some reason. So we see Koopa on Earth,
like materialize,
yeah, and the effect that they do is the Infinity War thing where they sort of turn to ash.
Right.
Like it's very reminiscent of it. I was like, wow,
yeah,
pretty
super weird,
kind of ahead of their time, actually.
But like, even if they did merge the two worlds, like not even just crossing over, but merge the two worlds,
yeah, no indication of his plan beyond that.
Yeah, what is it like? And once again, there's no way he beats the United States.
Yeah,
in the 90s.
Well, he hasn't even I guess he sent people out there to kidnap women looking for Daisy, but you'd think that if that's his plan, he would go out there and do some reconnaissance so that he knows how to infiltrate the United States. But you look at that,
and it's like they abducted like a dozen women.
Yeah, because he sends the two fucking stupidest people.
You can't even get one woman, and you think you're gonna rule two worlds combined into one? No.
Yeah. All right, we should probably wrap this up, right?
I think we should. I think we should wrap up by saying something we enjoyed about the movie, just so it's not bashing it the whole time. I'm going to say Yoshi. I thought Yoshi was cool. I like the practical effects, the little lizards too. There was a lot of practical effects, which I thought worked.
Yeah, the set design is, well, I was going to say gorgeous. I don't know if it's gorgeous. It's very impressive. They really created like this whole
committed to an aesthetic
world visually, which I thought was pretty cool. Okay. My last point to end on a high note. I think this movie actually passes the Bechdel test.
Yeah, Aunt Petunia and Daisy talk about Daisy's mom.
Yeah,
for an extended period of time. So yeah, it probably does pass the Bechdel test.
Yeah, so not too bad. Oh, it also has the Twin Towers being destroyed. Yeah,
never forget.
I know I said I was going to end on a happy note, but that's pretty it's pretty prophetic, man.
Weird.
I think they knew what they were doing.
It's an inside job.
Anyway, Bechdel, good
loose change. All right.
Jet fuel doesn't melt steel beams.
There's going to be another movie Illumination Studios is making an animated Mario film. It's going to be the
Good.
first Nintendo film in, almost 20 years.
I'm here for it.
Yep. Oh, no, more than 20 years, almost 30 years. There was supposed to be a Metroid movie that came out in the mid-2000s, but then Nintendo pulled the plug on it. There have been rumors about a Zelda TV series or movie for a long time. So we'll see what happens with the Illumination. Maybe we'll revisit Mario and actually try to make sense of it when that movie comes out. Who knows? But before we move on to Sonic, I have to ask.
So, what do you want to do tonight?
I don't know, get a pizza, watch the Grassy Junior High.
So what have you been up to, bud?
I finally got around to watching Skyfall. I really wanted to watch it after we did our James Bond thing 3 months ago when the world made sense. And it's not available for streaming. I finally bit the bullet and paid the $4 for it. Yeah, it was all right.
Yeah, that one gets a lot of love.
Yeah.
I think it's really good until the end.
And
like,
I watched that and Spectre a week apart from each other, and Spectre gets a lot of hate because he's like, I'm the author of your pain and all this. Like, it feels contrived, which it is. But I didn't feel like Skyfall was that much better. I got to the end of the movie and I was like, what's going on? Like,
I agree with you 100% on that. I still think Casino Royale is the best Craig Bond. Skyfall basically destroys that popular theory that James Bond is not one person, but like a moniker, and everybody who becomes 007 takes that name. But by having, like, oh, here's your old car that you use, and it's like the Aston Martin with the oil slicks and stuff like that, and then it shows like his grave.
Do you think that Craig Bond was operating under that principle? I didn't get that impression.
What do you mean?
Oh, I always thought that the Craig Bond was just like its own thing and nobody else was 007 before him. Is that what you mean?
Well, no, that's the thing, is that's always been like a fan theory that the studio's kind of been like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Because when you look at, the Roger Moore Bond versus the Timothy Dalton Bond versus the Sean Connery Bond versus the Pierce Brosnan Bond, they're all different. They have similarities, but they all have their own things that make them unique. So it was always a theory, even with Daniel Craig, that, hey, maybe his name isn't really James Bond, but in this, no, we find out that it really is him. There is no, he's been all the Bonds kind of thing. It's like, obviously this is a rebooted universe, but there were no other Bonds before him. So that movie kind of broke that. But I agree with you. I don't think it's any better than Spectre.
I mean, I think it's better than Spectre by very little. I watched the first two prequels of Star Wars also, episodes 1 and 2.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Hey, man. You know what? I have more good things to say about Super Mario Brothers than I do about the Phantom Menace.
Yep, I get that. Totally understand that. Katrina and I watched all of Fleabag. There's only 12 episodes. It's two six-season episodes. Super good. We started watching Cheers. We're like halfway through season 1. Surprisingly, that show is very progressive.
Yeah.
Like for the 80s.
I've never watched it.
It's really good, and it has like from episode 1, episode 2 has some pretty progressive themes in it.
That's cool.
Which really surprised me. I played through Dead Rising 4 since we last recorded an episode.
Nice. I started Batman Arkham Asylum.
Yep. Yeah, I think you were telling me about that on the last episode. Good games.
Yeah, I'm excited.
And I think that's pretty much everything. Well, yeah, I mean, we watched a lot of stuff when we weren't actively online watching the news with everything that's going on with the protests. Yeah. We were desperately trying to distract ourselves with happy stuff. So we ended up watching, a lot of short sitcom kind of style stuff just because we needed something to distract us. But that's what I've been up to. Sonic. I guess I'll do the 90-second summary elevator pitch kind of thing. Yeah. So Sonic is from an alternate dimension. He is a baby hedgehog who can run very fast. We have no real frame of reference to what his actual powers and speed and limitations are, but even as a baby, he was very fast. He was raised by an owl, an interdimensional owl, and she told him, just like the Kevin Costner Kent, don't use your powers or like people are going to come for you. And he uses his powers, and a bunch of Knuckles end up attacking him and his owl mom. So he ends up on Earth for, honestly, I have no idea how long, but he grows up. I don't know if he's supposed to be a teenager or a stunted adult. No idea. But he gets discovered again, and so he needs to go to San Francisco to find his coin purse so he can travel to another dimension. And he gets James Marsden reprises his role from Hop to ferry another CG creature to, a destination.
Yeah. It's essentially Due Date. It's a buddy road trip movie.
Yep. I'm just going to say it at the top. I did not care for this film.
I spoke to you before I watched it, and you had nothing good to say about it. So I went in with low expectations, and I kind of had a good time with it. I don't know if I'd recommend it to anybody, but if I had a kid, I would take them to see this. And if they, as kids do, wanted to watch it over and over, I'd have less of a problem with this than Trolls or something.
See, I would have
actually, maybe that's not fair to
a
Trolls.
Huge problem with this because I didn't think there was anything redeeming about this movie. Like,
dude, Jim Carrey is in.
I thought he was
full
annoying as hell
1994 Jim Carrey mode the entire time, and I loved it.
You see, I hated it. I thought it was obnoxious. I thought it was exactly that. Like,
are you a fan
go
of
back and watch
Ace Ventura and Dumb and Dumber?
At the
Mask?
time, I was. Watch those movies now, and they're not very good. We've covered some of them on Ruined My Childhood.
Well, listen, I'm fully ready to admit that that is nostalgia for me. I'm not going to argue that. Actually, I did watch Ace Ventura last month, I think, and
that movie's very problematic.
It's dated. Well, I mean, let's take all of that out. Let's just talk about Ace Ventura as a character and not even his politics or anything, just like the way he acts. Yeah, it's pretty obnoxious. Like as an adult, it has a different effect than when you're a 12-year-old boy. Yeah. But I have a lot of nostalgia for that kind of stuff, and in relatively small doses, like 2 hours, it's fine. So I had a good time with it.
I
also like seeing him be evil.
I did not care for the character like at all. Like it was like Dr. Evil, but I actually think less entertaining than Dr. Evil.
I rewatched Austin Powers a couple months ago as well, and so I have that kind of fresh in my mind, and I disagree with you.
I think it's a worse version. I think it's Dr. Evil on Mountain Dew.
That sounds good to me.
So the biggest issue I had with this movie, I watched this when it was in theaters.
I want to respond to that. Actually, I think Dr. Evil is like a buffoon and it's a joke, and that's also just like Mike Myers' style of comedy. And Dr. Robotnik is they're both doctors. I just realized that Dr. Robotnik
he did the same jokes though. A lot of the jokes were the same. Like Scotty No was essentially what he did to the general at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I guess, but I'm just saying.
Shut up. Shh.
Yeah, I
Who
get
cares?
it.
Nobody cares. It was like
that's kind of funny, but like, I just think that Dr. Robotnik is more. Capable. He's more of a shitty person. Yeah, he's more capable, and he's better at being a bad guy. He's quick, and you could tell that he really like looks down on literally everybody, and he makes that apparent. And I thought at times he was like he was actually kind of scary.
Yeah, he was definitely evil, but then there were certain things like that music number in the middle of the movie. It just was like, it took me out of it. Like, it's just...
Well, listen, I'm not defending every second of the movie.
The biggest problem I had with this movie was...
that it's propaganda?
Propaganda? A little bit.
Yeah. James Marsden is a good cop.
Yeah. The biggest issue I had with this movie was... we know, obviously, that there was a different version of Sonic in the first trailer that admittedly was terrible.
Mm-hmm. They did a great job fixing him, I think.
So he looks like the video game character, but he doesn't look like a character that can actually exist. And he looks like a cartoon in the real world. And the problem is, like, cool, if you're going to make it like a Pixels thing, like that Adam Sandler movie, or you're going to have like a Who Framed Roger Rabbit or something like that, where it's like, an animated world and a human world combined, cool, totally on board. But it looks like a cartoon walking around in the real world. And that's the issue that I had.
He can run 1,000 miles an hour. Like, I'm not tripping that his legs look like Jell-O.
Yeah, I don't care about that, but I just mean like when he's sitting there talking to James Marsden, whether it's at the bar or it's in the hotel room or in his car, it looks like he's talking to a cartoon. Like it looks like Roger Rabbit.
That didn't bother me, but our opinions are irrelevant because it's a movie that's made for 9-year-olds. So I would see how many 9-year-olds
the Marvel movies. Like you have Rocket Raccoon. looks photorealistic, looks like it could exist in as an alien in real life. Sonic doesn't look like that. Like, if you want an animated looking Sonic, why not make an animated film?
I think you're splitting hairs there.
I don't see how, like, why not make it an animated Sonic film and keep it even more faithful to the character? Have him go after the Chaos Emerald.
Maybe that would be great, but what I'm talking about is that the version of him in this movie in the real world didn't bother me.
I think it's weird that we make excuses for a movie being for children, because you can make a smart film for children and you can make a silly film for children, but why do you have to make, like, obviously they put a lot of money into it because they went back and redid it, but like, why not spend the money and the time and make a good model for the character where it looks like it can exist? Like, it just doesn't.
They did
look
that.
like
That's the one that they changed. He had like calves and shit in the original design, and people hated
even
it.
That still, when you look at the trailer, it still looked like a bad cartoon. Like, it doesn't look like. Yes, it was more. They made it look like an alien and everything. Like, it didn't really. My issue is, it's just like, I would have preferred if maybe they made the fur look a little bit more realistic. Maybe not make the eye, like, make the eyes look like eyes, even if they're oversized. Like, it looked like a video game.
I think your opinion is valid, and I hear you, but I also think that that's a matter of taste that is not necessarily an inarguable flaw with the movie.
See, the thing is, but it doesn't,
like, it's not a
plot hole. When you look
hole.
at the CG itself, it doesn't look good. Like, I went back and watched clips of Hop, which came out in 2011 with James Marsden, and like looked at scenes, and that bunny looks. Yeah, the bunny looks the same as Sonic in terms of quality. So 9 years came by, and like we still were like, nope, this is good enough for kids. I honestly feel like it's this is good enough for kids. They don't need a good CG model. And that's my issue with this. It's like, you could have, yeah. But I
Let's
agree.
move
it's
on.
a stylistic choice that I don't agree with. Like, it really, if I'm going to watch a cartoon, I want to watch a cartoon.
That's fair. Speaking of Dennis Hopper, I love that Sonic was a fan of the movies Speed and the Naked Gun
me
series.
Too. I do like that he was a Keanu. He's like, yes, Keanu.
Yeah, dude, that was cool.
I did appreciate that. That there's two things I liked and appreciated: that he likes Keanu, and the other thing was the one Robotnik joke that I liked was when Robotnik first meets Tom, and he's trying to like illegally search his house. He says something along the lines of like, I was dropping formulas when you were spitting up formula. And he's like, actually, I was breastfeeding. He's like, way to rub that in my orphan face.
Yeah.
I did like that. I thought that was a good joke.
Hey, so throughout this movie, Sonic is hesitant. Part of the reason that he's hesitant to leave Earth is because the only world that he has left to go to is a mushroom world. Is that a reference to Mario?
It isn't. I looked it up. There actually is a mushroom level in even the original Sonic game. So
that's a bummer.
Yeah, because they were different universes. Now, obviously, Sonic is in a lot of the Mario stuff now, but it wasn't always.
I have a question.
Yep.
Sonic is covered in fur, right? Like, we're just assuming that's normal animal fur?
Correct.
So
and quills.
When he poops, does he wipe his ass or does he have to lick himself?
I don't know, dude.
Because he's
maybe
never
like
wearing
pellets,
clothes.
though, because a lot of like rodents and marsupials like are more like dry pellets, so they don't have to worry about that.
Okay. Also, how many calories do you think he needs to eat?
I don't know, but like his speed is
very
is
inconsistent.
The other gripe that I have, because it's like he kind of has this mode where he like turns blue and starts glowing.
Oh yeah, Sonic 4.
Yeah, and everything where it's like the Speed Force for like the Flash, and when he gets going in that speed or that energy mode, like he makes EMPs. And there's this thing that came out when the trailer came out that he killed 435 children. So basically there's this
thing
where
life
somebody
support?
calculated it, where it's like, okay, we know he's in the Pacific Northwest. We don't know exactly where. We now know, once the movie came out, it was Montana, but the guy extrapolated based off the entire PNW. But basically it was, if you have this EMP and all the hospitals go down, they calculated how many people at any given time it's like 1 in 7 births require spending some sort of time in the neonatal unit.
Right.
And so they calculated it based off the entire population of the PNW that 430 children potentially died. Newborn babies, not to mention, the other elderly who were on respirators and whatnot.
This was kind of a Man of Steel issue for this movie. Just unintended collateral damage that they don't really address.
But my issue with that is when it turns out like it's like when he's mad, he kind of gets these extra powers. But it kind of seems
He's
like
going
you
through
should
puberty.
make it right. It makes it, to me, it should be almost like in the Fantastic Four movie, the Human Torch. If he gets too hot, like he can control it, but if he gets too hot, he can actually like burn the atmosphere and destroy the world. And I almost feel like it should be, if Sonic runs too fast, he starts building up this charge and does the EMP. But that's not the case. It's only just randomly he can do this, because there are points where there are 2 Quicksilver scenes from like the X-Men movies where he moves so fast that time is not even just traveling, like it's not even standing still. It's almost like time doesn't exist for him. Like everything is standing still. He goes through a bar and destroys like the entire bar and gets everybody to defeat themselves with like the wonky physics.
He's like moving at the speed of light.
You're right. And everything, but that doesn't cause any harm or anything. Like if you're moving at that speed and you touch somebody, they're dead. But let alone, but you know what? Ignore the physics. It's a child's movie.
Yeah,
I could ignore the physics, but it's like, how come you can do that without becoming blue and getting all that charge? Like it seems weird that he has that much power without getting overcharged.
Yeah. On the point of his speed, because I was wondering about that too. Like, how fast is he really going? And in the beginning of the movie, James Marsden's character is in his pigmobile, and he's trying to get people's with his speed gun. He's trying to figure out people's speeds, and as they drive by, and Sonic is running by, and then hopping behind the car and looking through the back window to see how fast he's going. I think it was 296, and then he did it again and it was 300, and he was like, it was like, oh, I'm excited that I did 4 miles an hour faster. But 300 miles an hour is like not as fast as he's going throughout the rest of the movie.
Right. Well,
like
that's
not nearly.
NASCAR gets 200 miles an hour and you could still see those cars. Like he's moving 50% faster. You would be able to see him.
They're in the car at some point, and he sees a sign for the world's largest rubber band ball, and he's like, hey, can we pull over and check that out? And Westworld's like, no, we don't have time for that. And he's like, oh. And then he disappears, and James Marsden is like, huh? And then he reappears like in a second, and he's got all this like stuff from the world's largest rubber band ball museum, and he's like, it wasn't that good anyway. So in the matter of, let's say 2 seconds, which is not, it's even shorter than that, I'm sure. Matter of a couple seconds, he runs 10 miles and checks out the entire museum, and then gets back to the car.
And he had to have stolen all that stuff, because
he doesn't have any money.
He doesn't have money.
He doesn't have any pockets.
Purchase a transaction.
Yeah. So, maybe one of our listeners can do the math there, but I know it's faster than 300 miles an hour.
Yeah. Well, it makes no sense. But then you have other points where, even at the beginning of the movie, when he's still like explaining everything that's going on, like, oh, I have my little bachelor pad, and like he's doing at the same time, he's like doing double Dutch jump rope with himself doing that thing. So
he plays a whole baseball game by himself.
Yeah. But that I kind of get, because it's like you can run, you're waiting for the ball. Like that has some lags that make sense. But to be
the double Dutch
so
is more
fast
impressive.
that at the same time he's holding 2 ends of the jump rope and doing the jumping. It's like you are moving beyond the speed of light to be able to move that fast and exist at 3 different places. Like it just, even the ping pong thing I can forgive, because it's like he runs over that fast, but while the ball's traveling, that makes sense. But ping pong balls have terminal velocity. You can't get the ping pong ball to get faster than a certain point. Like, so like once again, it's a kid's movie. I'm going to forgive certain physics things, but also it's just like, how is he not destroying everything? Like he had the same pair of shoes forever. Like, how did he not destroy those shoes? And the friction,
and then
does not exist.
The little girl gives him a pair of Yeezys.
Yeah.
That's cute. Know. Another Dr. Robotnik thing that I liked was that he spoke Japanese or something at some point, just completely randomly.
Which I'm fine with. He also speaks French at a certain point. That makes sense. I'm totally on board with that.
Because, I just like the way it happened, though. I thought it was like all of a sudden. I don't think it wasn't like he didn't need to do it. He just chose to insult somebody in Japanese.
So we get that at a certain point, with his quills have unlimited energy in them. Doesn't make sense. That breaks the laws of physics as well. Whatever. I'll forgive it.
It's magic.
Forgive the weird physics, right?
It's magic.
Dr. Robotnik uses one of his quills to power his machines and keep up with him. Cool. I will buy that you can create and create an engine that can harness the speed force of Sonic. But
That
he's
annoyed
just
me.
in this machine. How does he perceive time
Yeah.
fast enough and that he can manage
Well,
a ship going that fast
There's people have done
through the city?
people have done scientific breakdowns of Tony Stark and Iron Man, and like his brain would be fucking mush because he's constantly making these like full stops after going 500 miles an hour or something.
Yeah, the inertia
And-
would destroy his brain.
Yeah, and Sonic is magic, so let's not worry about him. But Dr. Robotnik is not. So yeah, if he was going just under the speed of light in his little machine and then came to a stop or made a hard turn or something, yeah, his fucking brain would just slush
And
around in his
I
head.
will give that he creates an inertia dampener or something like that, like in Star Trek. I will wave that away. My biggest issue is just perception. How is he able to track Sonic moving at that speed? Just because you're in a ship that can travel at those same speeds, how are you steering it? How are you able to do
Right,
that? Like,
because we can believe that Sonic has developed these reflexes where he hits a ping pong ball, but he's only using a little bit of power.
Right.
But yeah, Dr. Robotnik's, it's his first time doing that. So
right. But I mean, even you take that out, like human perception's only so fast
Right.
and everything. Like,
your synapses
we
have
have
to
jets
fire.
that move in multi. Like, how is he able to travel at near speeds of light? Because that's how fast Sonic is ultimately moving at certain points. It makes no sense. And Sonic's like, how is he even keeping up with me? So it's like, cool. I'll give you that he made the technology, but I just don't see a human being able to pilot that.
Yeah, not the hill that I would die on, but I hear you.
I'm just saying, it's just another thing to me that bothered. Like, I would have liked to see if he's that smart to come up with some other way of stopping Sonic.
Right. Yeah, and I think
making-
just like taking the quill from him and putting it in his ship is kind of lazy, and also like falls into this trap that we've been seeing so often with like the Marvel movies specifically, where a bad guy is sort of just an evil version of the good guy.
I
or
agree.
something.
I
It's
think
just like,
it's lazy.
yeah, exactly. It's like we've seen it, and it's maybe there's a more interesting way to do that. So I'm with you.
I mean, it's exactly the first Iron Man movie and the second one. Well, all the Iron Man movies, it's just like, oh, somebody
I
got one of
miss
Tony
Sam
Stark's.
Rockwell.
Yeah, I think Sam Rockwell should have come back. But yeah, it was just like, oh, we got Tony Stark's arc reactor, and now we can do all the things he can do.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. So yeah,
Speaking of Marvel, there's a Winter Soldier reference in there. I don't know if they really mean it to be a reference, but there's also a Dark Knight one. They have the same little magnetic disc that they shoot under a car that explodes.
Oh yeah,
That's in the Winter Soldier. And this is another funny I guess it's not Dr. Robotnik. They're talking about his car. This is a Dark Knight reference. Dr. Robotnik has this like drone tank that they destroy, and then it turns into a little motorcycle like the Dark Knight.
and then into a unicycle.
Yeah. And then Sonic says, I think that tank just had a baby.
Yeah,
That's good.
And that was the other thing that I was just confused about. So this was Ben Schwartz played Sonic. He did the voice and the mocap for the facial expressions.
But they really emphasize that it's just his voice. Like they make a point of saying that. I thought it was kind of insulting.
Yeah, and he's famous for playing John Ralphio in Parks and Rec. And my biggest thing was like, how old is Sonic supposed to be? Because he has like the race car bed, and he's super excited about that at the end. Like, is he supposed to be like a preteen kind of thing, or is he supposed to be like a 30-year-old man who's just like a man child?
No, I thought he was like 15 or something.
Like that, but I just wish they explicitly said like 15 years later, so we understand. Because it's like maybe he's just a developmentally challenged adult.
He might not age the same way that
he might not, but like give us like an indicator. Like I wish he said like, "Oh, I'm like a teenager."
Yeah.
And everything is like, "Oh, this James Marsden's like the dad I never had," or something. Like it's
Well,
just
they're friends. It's not his dad.
they're exactly. So now it's like, so if he's a child still, or even a teenager, having
that's a
an
better
adult
point.
friend is still a little weird.
Yeah. That's a good way to make that point. I hear you.
Or if it's like, okay, he's 21, 22, and he's just really immature, cool. I'll buy that. I just wish I knew what he was.
Is there, I mean, I guess you're asking this, so you probably don't remember. Do we get an indication of how much time passes from when he goes to Earth?
None
I thought
whatsoever.
there was, but now I can't think of it.
No, there wasn't any indication of like how long it's been.
It seems like he hasn't been there that long. It seems like it's been a few years. If I had to guess.
I feel like because he's like
the way he
once
talks
again,
about like knowing the people of the town, and like specifically like watching movies with Westworld and his wife through their window.
Right.
It doesn't seem like he grew up with James Marsden, because if he was there for 15 years, he would have known James Marsden since he was 15. But he's just like, oh, here's Donut Lord, and I like to watch movies with him and his wife.
Right, and we don't necessarily know that he arrived right in Green Hills. Like maybe we don't know, like that, and that's the thing. It's just like we don't really know what his journey is, or was, or what his experiences on Earth were. Because you're right, because they mentioned that I don't remember the last name of Tom, or as you've been calling him, Westworld. They mentioned that his family for like going back like generations has been the sheriff of that town. So it's like, you're right. If he was there for 15 years, he would. I mean, James Marsden's in his 40s, so I mean, if he's been there for 15 years, he still would have been in his early 20s to mid 20s. Maybe he was off at college, but you'd still you would think he would know a little bit more. So there is no. It breaks down there too. Now, granted, we're really digging into a kids movie, but I think it's important for the character development to know, like, how old is he?
Yeah,
or what's he supposed to be?
I don't think they need to answer all of our questions here, but a little more of an indication of that.
Right.
Just something would have been good. Here's another question about Cyclops, since we talked about him a little bit right there. So he wants to see if he has what it takes, and I'm doing big air quotes, to be a street cop in San Francisco. And that's his arc, is he wants to leave the town that he grew up in, that his family has been sheriffs.
Which I get. He just wants to go to a big city.
Yeah, no complaints about that. But specifically, he wants to see if he has what it takes to be a street cop in San Francisco. And that just felt weird to me.
Right now, it definitely feels weird.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't think that. I think my opinion is separate from what's going on now, but yeah, it definitely, that's another thing. But I don't know, what does it take to be a street cop, to be the fucking dumbest kid in your class? And also, I don't know that there's a whole lot of, I mean, San Francisco is a major metropolitan American city. It's up there. It's not Oklahoma, but is there a ton of crime in San Francisco? Why would they pick that and not New York or something?
Right. Well, I think,
or even Los Angeles, frankly.
His wife is, I think, was a teacher or something. And so it's you want to go
somewhere I have a question
about
that
artsy
too.
for her and everything. I think you want to go to somewhere
they
that's
don't say any
still,
of that in the movie.
Culturally,
none of that's in the movie.
Interesting.
None of that's in the movie.
What?
He just wants to he wants to see if he has what it takes to be a street cop.
to be a cop in a big city. I think, this is me reading between the lines, but I think he's trying to find a place that still has some liberal values and values life and everything. I think that's part of it. No, but I do agree with you. If you're I want to be this tough cop, it's Los Angeles or New York or Detroit.
Yeah, and also then what does that say about the character? I mean, I know now I'm sort of extrapolating about his intentions, but he said he wanted to see if he had what it takes to be a street cop. So I think
he just means when you look at it, it's almost like in a Hot Fuzz, you have. It's almost a reverse of Hot Fuzz, where you have, Nicholas Angel, played by Simon Pegg, is the tough cop who makes it in the big city and goes to the small town, and you have Nick Frost plays a small city cop who wants to go be, have the action in the big city. You want to leave the small town. Everybody wants to leave their small town and go.
Yeah, that's not what I'm complaining about.
But
my complaint is about
get your point.
Him wanting to be a street cop. I think that's just I think that's a weird motivation. I don't relate to it. And also the choice of city. I don't think that 2020 San Francisco is famously crime ridden. I think he could have set the bar a little higher if his intention was really to test himself as a street cop.
But his big thing was that he wanted to help people too. And I think San Francisco obviously has crime, but there are, obviously there's the homeless people, and there is enough crime where it's there's more crime than he's used to, because his biggest thing is there was nothing to do in his town. He sat at a speed trap for hours and nothing happened. And
I mean, I know they're not going to put all this in a kid's movie, but what you're saying is not in the movie.
I think it's pretty obvious that's what it is. There's nothing for him to do. He says it to the deputy in his town is oh, nope, I'm doing this. And he goes, really? No, there's literally nothing to do here. I think that's really what it was. Is it's he doesn't feel like he is a cop. He feels like a guardian of the city. He mentions people call me to help, change a tire or stuff I don't remember exactly, but like they call him around to do little odds and ends. Like at the end of the movie, they're teleported through a ring and they land in a hay barrel, and the guy's like, "Oh, I actually could use your help, like doing some chores on the farm." It's like he's just like the guy that everyone goes to for everything versus being a cop. I think he just wants to be a cop. But I agree with you. It is kind of like, does he want to go kill a guy? Is that what he wants to do? Like,
it's unclear, and it's not their fault that we're watching it now, but it raises questions.
Yeah, I agree.
Speaking of his wife, by the way, I thought it was totally unclear what was going on with his wife once his road trip with Sonic kicked off.
Yeah, because she was like in San Francisco.
All of a sudden.
Yeah. Like she left
he took off with Sonic, and then I was like, "Hey man, don't you have to check in with your wife?" Like,
but she was already in San Francisco. But like, who's packing?
But I didn't know that. And then the dog was there too. He's like, "Yeah, my best friend, this little guy, this little dog." And then, we never saw the dog at the beginning, right? And then the dog's in San Francisco, so like the dog flew with the wife. Why would you put a dog on a plane across the country if he was intending on staying in Montana, being the sheriff
for a little while? Because it was going to be pending the background check. So it's like, being an adult, I fill in some of the gaps and think, okay, well, she's going to stay with the sister and look for an apartment, kind of thing. But you're right, they don't explain it.
Yeah, she just disappears for a while, and then she
just disappears in there. Yeah, they don't. And
I'm sure
they edit. I'm sure there are a lot more explanations, but they don't want a 2-hour kid movie. They need to get it down to 97 minutes, so they edit all the explanations out.
But writing or crafting an efficient hour and 40-minute long children's movie is an art, and part of that is knowing how to explain things quickly and succinctly and in a way that satisfies any questions that you have.
I agree.
And like not doing it.
I agree. Yeah.
By the way, that sister-in-law was really weirdly written, and that actually like bothered me.
I agree.
She was just a bitch for no reason.
Yeah.
And I think it didn't do any service to the movie.
Like, I would get her character if there was a scene where like maybe the family would just disappointed, like maybe James Marsden wasn't a good cop. But it's like, he's very successful in his town.
What could you not like about him?
Yeah. Like his whole town likes him. He's successful. He takes care of her. Like they have this whole thing where it's like he works 3 jobs so she can finish going to school.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. It's like he has done nothing but right by her sister.
Yeah. And comes off.
But she is in the Bay Area. Maybe she just has a thing against cops, white cops.
Well, okay. That's what I was going to say. It actually comes off like she's a caricature, because we've only seen her being like a sassy, angry black woman. And then she hates James Marsden for no reason, and she's black and he's white. So it's like, okay, is she just a racist? Like, what's the deal with this woman?
I don't know. I agree that her character was a little problematic and just came off as a stereotype caricature.
Yeah, and in a kids movie, that is a real problem. Like that kind of
agree. No, I agree with you 100%. I think we should wrap up saying something positive about the movie. I liked Tails at the end.
That's what I was going to say too. I like Tails, and I like that they hinted at Knuckles, because I was a big fan of Sonic.
Because of the whole tribe. I loved Knuckles as a kid.
I have one more question.
Yep.
They built him a cave in their attic at the end.
Mm-hmm.
When do they plan on fucking?
I don't know.
That's weird, right?
I mean, how is it any different than just having a kid?
I guess. I don't know. He's like zooming around and stuff, though. Like, I feel like he needs a little apartment away from everything.
Right. Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe they don't have sex.
Maybe. It's entirely possible.
Who knows if he has like supersonic hearing or something?
Oh, man.
Anyway, I had a pretty good time with it.
We're going to talk about the news now. Movie news. Going into the news segment, then we'll wrap up the episode. Not a lot. First thing I have was they were kind of hinting that there was going to be a Bane movie in the vein of the Joker movie that came out last year.
Yeah.
But apparently they want to set up Bane as the second villain, or the villain in the second Batman movie with Robert Pattinson. So apparently they scrapped doing a Bane movie, which I think Bane could be a really cool movie if you really look at the background of the character. They've also hinted that the Joker is going to be set up and possibly be the villain in the third movie, but there's going to be whispers of him in this movie that's being filmed right now.
I think it would be really cool if they could build up to the Joker and like plant the seeds in the first movie, because none of the Batman movies have really done anything like that yet. And I think, we wanted to see like there's a rumor that Harvey Dent, or no, in an early version of The Dark Knight, Harvey Dent was going to be set up and then pay off in the third movie. The Joker was going to throw acid in his face or whatever. And whether or not Heath Ledger died, I don't think that was going to happen, because they finished the movie the way it was, and then he died. But I love that idea. I love the idea of being more mindful of a trilogy like that. So I think that's
I agree.
Cool. I don't need to see
totally
a Bane solo movie though.
No,
I mean, maybe after this trilogy's done, but I think the Tom Hardy one is still pretty fresh in my mind.
I agree. I mean, I'm a big Bane is actually one of my favorite comic book characters, and I don't think they've done him justice in any of the movies. Like, they took Bane's origin story and gave it to Talia al Ghul, essentially, and that kind of bothered me.
Are you excited for Bane in the second Matt Reeves movie?
I
guess it'd be like 2025 or something.
Right, we'll see. Like, I'm still really need to know what's going on with this movie. Like, I'm very excited. I like Matt Reeves.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't like what I've seen from the Batman costume, but it's been very weird angles and everything, so we haven't really gotten a good look. I do like the Batmobile. I like they're bringing it back to a car, which we talked about, a couple episodes back. So I'm excited. Like, it's gonna get my money opening weekend, but I need to see more. The other thing, going kind of sticking with DC a little bit, with last episode we talked about the Zack Snyder cut. Apparently David Ayer may get a Suicide Squad David Ayer cut. Yep, I don't care about that. Evil Dead 4 has a new title. It's called Evil Dead Now.
By the way, this David Ayer cut is like part of exactly what I didn't want to have happen with the Zack Snyder cut. Like, now everything's gonna have the director's cut where they get to have their say. Like, just make the fucking movie.
Right.
And if it's Apocalypse Now, then you get to do your own version of it. If it's Blade Runner, then you get to do your own version. But like, I don't need to see another version of Suicide Squad. How much better could it be? And Justice League too.
I agree. So that's a thing. Evil Dead 4, we're unclear whether or not it's a reboot, if it exists in the Sam Raimi version, or if it exists in the Fede Alvarez version. But they have a director, and my computer locked up, so I can't remember the name of the director and writer, but he did The Hole or something like that, The Hole in the Ground, something like big horror movie that came out last year that apparently a lot of people really liked. But yeah, they named the fourth one. It's not going to have Ash Williams in it. It's apparently going to have another female antagonist or protagonist. And other than that, we don't have a lot of details. So I don't know if it's going to be yet another reboot or if it exists in either of the canons. So we'll find out more about that. And the last piece of news that I have is the update on our bet. NATO, or the National Association of Theater Owners.
That's an unfortunate name.
Was that
North American Treaty Organization?
Yeah, right. But it's also the National
Could have picked something else,
Association of
guys.
Theater Owners, right? Yeah. I know, I agree.
American Theater Association.
Yep, but they're saying that 90% of the theaters will be open in time for Tenet's release date. Now, who knows? That might change because of all these protests going on. I'm sure we're going to see a huge surge, but as of right now,
our Mayor Garcetti
open in theaters.
Our Mayor Garcetti seems to be pushing for a lot of stuff to open much sooner than he indicated before the protests.
I think that's the case. I think the same thing happened with our governor, Gavin Newsom. I think he just got too much pressure. And
yeah, so I think
the biggest thing would have been if we were told, like, hey, we're going to do this for 6 months. People would be fine. But I think the biggest thing is not knowing, like, we don't really know. And that just kept getting expanded. I think if you told everyone, hey, we're going to do this for 5 months or 6 months, people would go, okay, we have an end date. But right now it's just like, oh yeah, we don't really know when it's going to end. Like,
yeah. And also, like, if there was testing or, halfway decent leadership or something, if literally any part of the situation was better, I think people would be a little bit more okay with it.
I agree. So I agree.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
Rushing into things. I think if these protests didn't happen and we were continuing on the trend with the coronavirus, who knows what's going to happen with these protests? I mean, we have protests with tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people across the
Well, I
world.
think that's actually going to be
an uptick.
Yeah, we'll see some spikes, but that's actually going to be a really good test balloon to see how contagious it is in a situation like that. Because in the protests, most people are wearing masks, and we don't really know how the virus spreads in a situation with a bunch of people, in the street in the open air together, but close, but wearing masks. That's a situation that we haven't seen a whole lot of stuff about till these protests. So I think the next week or so, we're going to get some useful information.
Yeah.
And hopefully people aren't getting infected as much. I was out there, so I'm really hoping I don't get it.
Yeah, I saw some of your videos.
Yeah. But we'll see what happens, man. As far as I'm concerned, it's a little bit more likely that Tenet will open in theaters as planned, but I still think it's a toss up.
Yeah, I think it's still too early to tell. I really do think we could end up putting shelter in place back in effect. But I think if these protests didn't happen, I think for sure it would have been opening in July. We'll see how it goes. But that's the news. I think maybe we wrap up by just talking about what the video game curse really briefly. I think someday we will get a movie that everyone says this is a good video game movie. I think we will get the Blade or X-Men or Spider-Man. Those three movies are all kind of credited for being the first good superhero movie that takes it serious. So I'm waiting for that first movie.
What do you think is the best superhero movie that has come out?
It's tricky.
I feel like there's a good one that's on the tip of my tongue and I can't think of what it is.
So it's tough because like when you look at Marvel, you can't really pick one Marvel movie because they're so interconnected. Like I think Iron Man obviously is a very important movie because it kicked off that whole thing. And it is a very good movie. I went and rewatched Iron Man about a year ago, and it is still a very, very good film. So like I think Iron Man's very important. Obviously the Christopher Nolan Batman movies. I think Batman Begins is underrated. I actually think it's as good, maybe even better than The Dark Knight. In terms of like getting that Batman as a symbol, Batman, that origin. I think Batman Begins is probably the best origin story of a superhero.
I'm waiting for you to tie this back into video games.
Where it got into the superhero thing was Spider-Man, X-Men, Blade are kind of were the catalyst that kicked off the superhero trend.
Right.
I waiting for that movie. Like what video game is going to be the one that goes, you can do this? Because a lot of people thought it was going to be Warcraft. A lot of people thought it was going to be Assassin's Creed. A lot of people thought Tomb Raider was really good. Right. I didn't think Tomb Raider was that good of a movie. The new one with Alicia Vikander.
I didn't bother with it.
I thought it was a pretty generic film. So I'm curious as to what the first one is really going to be. That is
my question is
the game.
My question is, what do you think is the best one that's come out so far? I'm not asking if it's good. Just what do you think is the best video game movie?
It's probably, I think Prince of Persia is damn near close. It's just
really?
Obviously suffered from whitewashing, but it has a lot of the elements of the game.
I never saw it.
And it's still fun. It's not a bad movie. It's a fun movie. It's not good, but they took some big swings. As much as Jake Gyllenhaal's white and not Persian, he does look a lot like the character in the second and third game.
He got away with it in 2004, whatever that was.
Yeah, it was like 2007, 2008, I think. I think that movie's solid. The new Tomb Raider, I just don't think is Tomb Raider enough. Like she doesn't solve really any puzzles, and she doesn't the action isn't really that great. I don't know. Like there isn't one that I feel is perfect, and I'm really hoping that.
Well, no, there's no perfect ones. Just asking what you think is the best attempt so far.
I think the best one so far is Prince of Persia. Honestly,
okay. I have some nostalgia attached here, and I'm not defending it as a good movie, and I haven't seen Tomb Raider or Prince of Persia, but I think Mortal Kombat is a ton of fun and maintains the tone that it's going for.
I agree. I just think
also
special effects dated a little bit. But
yeah,
I
100%.
do
and
agree
it's like,
with you on the tone.
It's a lot of like techno and stuff, but that doesn't dates it. But tonally and like the characters are interesting and they kind of do the things that you want them to do. So I think that's up there. Also, Resident Evil's like I haven't watched it in a long time.
The first Resident Evil's solid.
Yeah, it's just like, yeah, it's a horror movie.
Even the second one, the first two Resident Evil games are actually probably are. And I think it's interesting in that they had the lead of the series not be one of the leads of the games. Like,
Yeah, I think that was a good choice. I think that's interesting.
because you get that you have her interact with the characters we like, but I guess you can't really like when you have Jill Valentine in the second movie. I think they did a pretty good job with her. It disappointed when they finally brought Leon into the game, and like he was barely in it. But I think the first two movies were actually pretty solid. I kind of forgot about the Resident Evil games, but I think the first two are actually pretty damn close. Actually, I think that's probably is the best one is the first Resident Evil movie.
Oh, you know what?
call
I
out.
think. Thank you. I think people are probably going to write in and say they liked the Final Fantasy movie, Advent Children.
Nobody liked that.
Everybody loves that movie, man.
Oh man, that was just like
No, I don't remember anything about it. I thought I remembered some people having good things to say.
No, nobody has any good things to say about it. Like the
Okay.
Uncanny Valley thing, the story it wasn't Final Fantasy at all. Like it was weird. But yeah, I'm really interested in seeing. I'm really curious as to how Uncharted ends up if it ever comes out, because they've
Right.
lost like 5 directors.
Who's
They
supposed to
keep
be Nathan
recasting.
Drake?
They're going young so they can keep going. So it's Tom Holland has been tied to Nathan
Oh,
Drake
that's
for like
right,
3 years. So I'm curious to see that. The Last of Us is apparently getting an HBO adaptation, like a TV show. And I
Yeah,
think
Craig Mazin is writing it, who did
I-
Chernobyl.
that makes me very excited. Like I think that'll be the first, like this is what it is, but it's also, it's essentially a zombie story. So
We,
I don't know.
We can save this conversation for the next video game episode, but I'm curious what games you think would translate best to which mediums. And just for example, we don't have to go
agree,
into
yeah.
it, but I think Metroid would be a good trilogy
I think so too.
of films. But I think Zelda would be a good like Netflix series.
In the vein of like The Witcher, and I
Right.
think Zelda has even more of a following than The Witcher. I think they can really fill that gap from Game of Thrones. I agree with you 100% on that.
Yeah, for sure. All right.
Cool. Well, thanks for listening, everyone.
Thank you.
We're definitely going to come back to this one. I'm sure this episode rambled a little bit because these movies were just bonkers. But
I could talk about Mario so much more.
I am completely willing to rewatch Mario when the Mario animated film comes out and do a straight up standard Remake Rewind episode on Mario.
Hell yeah. We should watch the TV show too.
Oh God. Anyway, thanks for listening.
Thanks for
Alex,
tuning
where can
in.
our listeners find you?
I am on Instagram at Dysalexic, DYSALEXIC, and I'm on Twitter at Pulisci, PULISCI. And you can also find me on Letterboxd, tracking the movies that I watch at Pulisci.
Nice. You can check out everything that's MDXpods related at MDXpods.com. We're on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at MDXpods. Check out our other great show, Ruin My Childhood, with my wife, Kat. And that's it. Thanks for listening.
All right.
Bye.
Talk to you later.